The smoke was thick in the air, the heat so intense that it felt like the earth itself was on fire. People in Los Angeles were watching as the flames spread uncontrollably, devouring everything in their path. Buildings, homes, memories, and lives, all consumed in an unrelenting blaze. The sky, once a brilliant blue, now was a haunting shade of orange. Tears ran down the faces of those watching their lives slip away in a haze of smoke and embers. And amid the chaos, one man, a figure of immense power, began to speak. Donald Trump, the former president of the United States, had always been a polarizing figure, but today, his words struck a different chord. For many, the fire was a tragedy that couldn't be easily explained. But for Donald Trump, there was a reason that, to him, made perfect sense. A reason that he believed everyone should hear, a reason that would resonate with those already suffering from the devastation. The media had already been quick to report the scale of the disaster. Headlines flashed across every screen. Los Angeles fire. Thousands forced to evacuate. Destruction unleashes chaos in LA. Firefighters struggle to contain blaze. But none of them could truly capture the depth of the heartbreak that was unfolding. Entire communities were being erased in the blink of an eye, leaving people to wonder why something like this had to happen. Was it a freak accident? A natural disaster? Or was there something more? Donald Trump's voice rang out amidst the silence, offering his own perspective. You see, people, there are things that we don't want to talk about. We love to hide behind the easy explanations, but the truth is, there's something deeper at play here, Trump began, his tone unwavering. The fires in Los Angeles, they aren't just random acts of nature. This is the result of years, no, decades of bad management, bad policy, and yes, misdirected priorities. Trump's words were bold, his accusations sharp. He spoke about the failures of leadership, the neglect of infrastructure, and the weakness in the systems meant to protect communities from such disasters. He didn't mince his words. To him, this wasn't just another fire. This was a symbol of everything that had gone wrong in the city, in the state, and in the nation. For those listening, it felt like a slap in the face. How could anyone speak so coldly, so methodically in the face of such suffering? The victims of the fire weren't looking for blame, they were looking for hope. They were searching for answers, for someone to tell them how they could rebuild, how they could heal. But instead, Trump was offering a harsh, critical analysis of what he saw as systemic failures. And to some, it felt like salt being rubbed into a wound that would never heal. Yet, for others, there was something strangely compelling about his words. They had heard the same arguments before, but never with such conviction. To some, Trump's statement was the cold, hard truth they had been waiting for, the truth that no one else had the courage to say out loud. It wasn't just about the fire itself, it was about everything that had led up to it. The poor management of land, the inadequate preparation for disaster, the years of neglect that had culminated in this catastrophic moment. Let me tell you, Trump continued, Los Angeles has been sitting on its hands for far too long. We've seen fires like this before, but nothing was done to prevent them. We've seen the warning signs. We've seen the breakdown of our systems. And now look at this. Lives are being destroyed, homes are gone, and people are left with nothing. It didn't have to be this way. There was a brief pause, a moment where the weight of his words sank in. For many, the frustration was palpable. How could he stand there, so removed from the suffering, and speak as if it was all just a matter of policy? But for others, his words were the sharp jolt of reality that they had been waiting for. The truth was harsh, but perhaps it was the only way forward. The response was immediate. Some stood in disbelief, unable to reconcile the man speaking before them with the gravity of the situation. Others, however, found themselves nodding in agreement. They had seen the same issues, the same failures. They knew that Los Angeles, like so many cities, had been struggling with these problems for years. The fires were just a symptom of a much deeper, more complex issue. And in a strange way, Trump's blunt assessment seemed to expose that truth. For those who lived in the areas hardest hit by the flames, it felt like a betrayal. They had lost everything: their homes, their possessions, their sense of security, And here was Trump, pointing fingers instead of offering comfort. It was as if the tragedy was just another opportunity for him to push his agenda, to make others see the city's missteps in a way that fit his narrative. But deep down, beneath the anger and frustration, there was a part of them that understood. Los Angeles had been struggling for years. Its infrastructure had been crumbling. Its emergency systems had been overwhelmed. And when the fire came, there was no safety net to catch those who fell. The fire raged on, but Trump's words had set off a firestorm of their own. People took to social media to voice their outrage, their pain, and their disbelief. Some called for accountability, others demanded action. And then there were those who agreed with Trump, who saw the fire as a consequence of years of mismanagement and poor decision-making. As the weeks passed, the aftermath of the fire began to unfold. Emergency response teams worked tirelessly to contain the flames and rescue those trapped by the inferno. Volunteers rallied to provide aid to displaced families. The people of Los Angeles, united by tragedy, came together in ways that no one could have predicted. They rebuilt their homes, their communities, and their lives, one brick at a time. And amidst the pain and the sorrow, there was a renewed sense of hope. Hope that, somehow, they could emerge stronger from the ashes. Trump's words lingered in the air long after the fires had been extinguished. His analysis of the situation remained a source of division, but it also sparked important conversations about the future of Los Angeles and the country as a whole. Could things have been done differently? Could the city have been better prepared for such a disaster? These were questions that couldn't be ignored. In the end, the fires of Los Angeles had burned far more than just buildings. They had burned away the illusion that everything was fine, that the systems in place would always protect them. And as the city rebuilt, there was a realization that the true work had only just begun. Rebuilding wasn't just about putting up new structures. It was about healing the wounds of the past and addressing the problems that had led to this disaster in the first place. The fire had exposed the cracks in the foundation, and it was up to everyone, from government officials to ordinary citizens, to decide how to fill those cracks. Would they take the lessons learned from this tragedy and build something better, or would they let the same mistakes repeat themselves? Only time would tell. But for now, the people of Los Angeles had one thing that Trump's words could never take away: their resilience. In the face of loss, they had found a strength that no fire could ever destroy. They had faced the flames and emerged on the other side, ready to rebuild, ready to rise again. And as they did, they carried with them the lessons learned, the pain endured, and the hope that no fire, no disaster could ever take away. The fire's aftermath left Los Angeles scarred, but its people were unbroken. Despite the devastation, there was a sense of solidarity in the air, a bond forged in the crucible of disaster. The flames might have consumed homes and businesses, but the spirit of the city, of its residents, could not be destroyed. For those who lived through it, the fire was not just a disaster, it was a turning point, a wake-up call that they could no longer ignore. Yet, even as the survivors of Los Angeles came together to rebuild their city, the words of Donald Trump continued to echo through the airwaves, through the streets, and through the minds of many. They were a constant reminder that there was more at play than just the immediate crisis. Trump had spoken of mismanagement, of failure, of the need for accountability. Some people found themselves thinking, was he right? Was this truly a result of bad policy, or was it simply a freak of nature, an unpredictable disaster that no one could have seen coming? And for others, his words felt like an attack, a callous dissection of a tragedy that they were still living through. He had criticized the leadership, the preparedness, and the ability of the city to handle such a catastrophe, and many people resented that. How could someone who had never experienced what they were going through have the audacity to speak with such certainty about it? As the days turned into weeks, the media became filled with debates, interviews, and opinions about the cause of the fire. Experts came on air to discuss the dangers of climate change and the growing frequency of natural disasters. Others pointed to the lack of forest management, the dry conditions, and the rising temperatures that made the fires burn faster and hotter than anyone could have anticipated. But amidst all of the analysis, Trump's statement hung like a dark cloud over the conversation. Some questioned the timing of his words. Was he taking advantage of a national tragedy to push his own agenda? Was this a calculated attempt to divide the country even further, to shift the blame and point fingers? While the debate raged on, the people of Los Angeles were left to pick up the pieces. Firefighters, volunteers, and first responders worked tirelessly to clear the debris and help the victims. They rescued people from burning buildings, assisted those who had lost everything, and began the long process of rebuilding the shattered community. But it was a process that would take time. It wasn't just about rebuilding homes and businesses, it was about rebuilding trust, hope, and faith in the systems that were supposed to protect them. How could they trust that the city would be better prepared next time? How could they believe that the leadership had learned from this disaster, and that such a tragedy wouldn't happen again? And then, amid the chaos, Trump made another statement. This time, it wasn't just about the fire. It was about the future of Los Angeles, about how the city needed to change, how the leadership needed to be held accountable. The people of Los Angeles are strong, he said. They are survivors. But they are also being failed. They are being failed by leadership, by policy, by a system that isn't working. This city needs a new way forward, and that starts with strong, decisive leadership. To many, these words felt like salt in an open wound. After everything they had endured, they didn't need lectures on leadership or policy. They needed action. They needed support. They needed to feel like the people in power cared about them, that they would work to fix what was broken. But once again, Trump's words cut deep, forcing them to confront the reality of their situation. Were they truly being failed by their leaders? Was the system really as broken as he claimed? For some, the answer was clear. They had seen the cracks in the system long before the fire. They had seen the neglect, the lack of resources, the missed opportunities. The fire had merely exposed what had been hidden for so long. And in this moment of crisis, they realized that change was not only necessary but inevitable. They had to take matters into their own hands, to demand more from the people in power, to insist that something be done to ensure this never happened again. But for others, Trump's words felt like an attack on the city they loved. They were proud of Los Angeles, proud of the diversity, the innovation, the resilience of its people. How could anyone stand by and point fingers when they should be offering support? It was a bitter pill to swallow, and it left many feeling isolated, misunderstood, and angry. They had already suffered so much, and now they were being told that it was their fault, that they had somehow failed. The anger continued to simmer as the weeks passed. People began to question everything. How could they trust the government to protect them when it had failed them so many times before? How could they believe that their leaders had the best interests of the city at heart, when they had allowed the infrastructure to deteriorate, when they had ignored the warning signs? And what about climate change? Was the fire just another example of how the planet was changing, how the Earth itself was fighting back against the damage humanity had done? The questions were endless, and they weighed heavily on the minds of those who had survived. They didn't want to hear about policies or blame. They wanted to heal. They wanted to move forward. But how could they do that when they felt like they were constantly being told that they were at fault, that they were somehow to blame for what had happened? As the fire recovery efforts continued, so did the debates. Town halls were held, discussions were sparked, and activists rallied to demand accountability. There were protests, petitions, and calls for change. The survivors of the fire weren't just looking to rebuild, they were looking for justice. They wanted to know that their voices would be heard, that their pain would be acknowledged, and that their city would rise from the ashes stronger and more resilient than ever. But even as the people of Los Angeles fought for change, there was something deeper at play. There was a reckoning happening, not just in the city, but across the nation. The fire had exposed the fragility of the systems that were supposed to protect us. It had shown just how vulnerable we were, how easy it was for everything we built to be consumed in an instant. And in that vulnerability, there was a sense of powerlessness. No one was immune to the forces of nature. No amount of policy or leadership could stop the fires, the floods, the hurricanes that were becoming more frequent and more intense. But that powerlessness also gave birth to something else, something more hopeful, more enduring. In the face of disaster, the people of Los Angeles had come together. They had banded together to help each other, to support one another, and to rebuild what was lost. They had found strength in their shared experience, in their shared humanity. And that strength was something that no fire, no politician, no disaster could ever take away. Trump's words had shaken the city to its core. They had forced the people of Los Angeles to confront uncomfortable truths about their city, about their leaders, and about their future. But in the end, it wasn't his words that mattered. It was the people of Los Angeles who mattered. It was their resilience, their determination, and their ability to rise from the ashes that would define the future. And as the fire was eventually brought under control, and as the city began to rebuild, there was a quiet understanding among the survivors. They had been tested, but they had not been broken. The flames may have consumed their homes, their belongings, their memories, but they had not consumed their spirit. They had lost much, but they had gained something far more important, a renewed sense of purpose, a deeper connection to each other, and an unshakable belief that together they could overcome anything. In the end, the fire was not just a tragedy. It was a reminder of what truly matters. It was a wake-up call to the people of Los Angeles and to the world. We are all vulnerable, we are all fragile, but we are also capable of incredible strength, incredible resilience. The fire may have taken much, but it had also given much. It had given the people of Los Angeles a new beginning, a new chance to rebuild not just their city, but their hearts, their communities, and their future. And as the ashes settled, as the smoke cleared, there was one thing that no one could deny. The spirit of Los Angeles was alive and well, stronger than ever before.